In March of 1783, the officers of the Continental Army were near to rebellion over the Continental Congress's inability to pay the army and meet its financial commitments. By some accounts, they were on the verge of overthrowing Congress in a coup just 5 months before the Americans would officially win their war for independence with the Treaty of Paris. It was George Washington, who would later become the nation's first president, who preserved the Republic by putting on his glasses. His simple speech, which expressed vulnerability, "Gentlemen, you allow me to put on my spectacles, for I have not only grown gray, but almost blind in the service of my country," drew grown men to tears and immediately ended the Newburgh Conspiracy. You might want the leader of the United States to have vision. You might hope that they would have perspective, but owing to their age, most have required a little bit of corrective help. The history of presidential eyeglasses deserves to be remembered. Some U.S. presidents have lived their entire lives with vision defects, but even those who grew up with perfect vision have generally needed help by the time they reached the highest office in the land. The median age upon accession to the U.S. presidency is 55 years and 3 months, which tends to place a person into the age of the dreaded presbyopia, that part of aging where you start having to move things you are reading farther and farther away. Presbyopia is caused by hardening of the eye lens. Risk begins around age 40, and sadly it affects nearly everyone, driving a need for the dreaded reading glasses. Reportedly, nearly every U.S. president has required some form of vision correction, yet most have seemed surprisingly reticent to wear their specs in public. Like Washington, many who had held the nation's highest office might have considered wearing glasses to be unmanly, undignified, or simply to make them look old. Washington wore glasses so rarely that even his loyal officers, who had served him for years, had never seen him put them on. Yet he was said to particularly value a lorgnette, essentially glasses on a stick, given to him by the Marquis de Lafayette. John Adams' portraits don't include spectacles, even ones painted during his dotage, and yet a pair of his spectacles survives, and the prescription is slightly stronger than Washington's. Thomas Jefferson was always portrayed without glasses, even in a painting by Thomas Sully of Jefferson at the age of 78, yet he was known to have many pairs of glasses, and even to work on their design. In his second term of office, he ordered no less than 18 pairs, 12 bifocals, and 6 reading glasses from Philadelphia optician John McAllister, one of the first people in America to manufacture eyeglasses in the U.S., rather than import them. Andrew Jackson's presidential portraits include no spectacles, but later portraits often show him wearing glasses. This 1840 portrait by Edward Dalton Marchant of Jackson at the age of 73 shows him wearing 4-lens glasses, glasses popular in the 19th century that had 2 sets of lenses. One set could fold back behind the temples. This allowed Jackson to alter the magnification of the lenses. In 1840, Jackson was photographed using one of the earliest photographic processes, the daguerreotype, wearing his 4-lens spectacles, making him the first U.S. president to be photographed wearing glasses. Abraham Lincoln was farsighted but needed glasses to read. Newspapers directly mention him donning spectacles before presenting his first inaugural address in March 1861. The Chicago Tribune wrote at the time, "Mr. Lincoln rose, calm, collected, and serene in manner, and with a preliminary glance over his vast and imposing auditory, put on his spectacles and began to read." Likewise, observers of perhaps Lincoln's most famous speech, the November 19, 1863 Gettysburg Address, noted him donning a pair of spectacles and looking over his manuscript before commencing the speech. In the many photos of Lincoln, however, only 2 seem to include his spectacles, but we know he owned many pairs and used them regularly. A July 1883 edition of the Chicago Tribune quoted Dr. J. Phillips, an optician, as having sold Lincoln his first pair of spectacles in Springfield, Illinois, 5 or 6 years before he was elected president. The doctor recalled he used to wear his pants and his boots then, and nobody thought of him as a future president. Dr. Phillips' office was in the same square in Springfield as Lincoln's office, and the doctor said, "Abe Lincoln was a good friend of mine, but I won't tell you the stories he used to tell me, for I wouldn't want you to put them in the paper." Phillips continued, "When he was elected president, I made him 3 pairs, 1 of gold and 2 of steel. I came to Chicago in 1856, and Dr. Wallace, who was afterwards a paymaster in the Army, used to come here every year to get Abe Lincoln's spectacles changed. I would furnish new ones and fix up the old ones and sell them to other people." Those extra pairs of Abraham Lincoln's glasses would of course be incredibly valuable today, but a 2012 article written by Dr. David Fleischman in the online museum Antique Spectacles and Other Vision Aids concludes that only 2 pairs of glasses today are proven to have belonged to Abraham Lincoln, and both were on his person on April 15th, 1865. After his assassination, the contents of Lincoln's pockets were given to the family and passed down until they were donated to the Library of Congress in 1937. Among the few items that Lincoln carried that night were 2 sets of spectacles, a spectacle case, a unique spectacle cleaner, and a small pocket knife thought to be used to fix his spectacles. The 2 pairs were different strengths, and one was a unique folding pair of which only 4 known examples are still known to exist. Fleischmann describes the folding pair as the rarest, greatest, most significant pair of eyeglasses ever created during the past 700 years. Despite only being shown wearing glasses in 1 or maybe 2 photos out of hundreds taken, the fact that Abraham Lincoln had 2 pairs of spectacles among the very few items with him on the night that he was assassinated is evidence of how important his spectacles were to Abraham Lincoln and his presidency. Although all the U.S. presidents of the 19th century were thought to use at least reading spectacles, and many had pairs that have been preserved, not one included them in their official presidential portrait until the very last president of the century. The 25th president, William McKinley's portrait, painted by Harriet A.S. Murphy in 1902, shows a pair of spectacles in his hand. Apparently this idea that wearing spectacles was a sign of weakness or infirmity, the same vulnerability that George Washington used to end the Newburgh conspiracy, kept the nation's chief executives from putting out their spectacles in public. But it was the man who replaced William McKinley after his assassination who was the first to be shown in his official portrait wearing his glasses, and he represented the very opposite of weakness. While many U.S. presidents were suffering from presbyopia due to age, the nation's 26th president, Theodore Roosevelt, suffered from acute myopia from childhood. Already suffering from severe asthma, which at first limited his activity and then spurred him on to extraordinarily active life to overcome his weakness, Theodore Roosevelt first got glasses when at age 13 he was given his first gun and realized while hunting that his friends were shooting animals he couldn't even see. In his autobiography he recalled, "I had no idea how beautiful the world was until I got those spectacles." Roosevelt apparently never saw the spectacles as a sign of weakness, but others might have. In 1884, the 26-year-old Roosevelt had gone west to build a ranch in North Dakota. On a visit to Montana, a drunken ruffian saw the young man's glasses and thought him an easy target, demanding that Four Eyes buy a round of drinks. When the man threatened Roosevelt with a gun, Four Eyes, who was among other things an accomplished pugilist, knocked the man senseless with 3 quick punches. At the outbreak of the Spanish-American War in 1898, Roosevelt resigned his post as Assistant Secretary of the Navy and helped to raise the first U.S. volunteer cavalry, which was deployed to Cuba. In July, he led the regiment in a difficult assault on Kettle Hill, part of the battle to capture the San Juan Heights. In the famous battle, the regiment fought as infantry, essentially crawling up the steep hill under fire. But their daring lieutenant colonel remained mounted, exhorting his men to victory, despite making himself a target for the enemy. For the action, Roosevelt would eventually be awarded the Medal of Honor, the only U.S. president to have received the award, and his glasses were part of the story. Roosevelt preferred a type of glasses that were popular at the time, that were rimless and didn't have earpieces. Now, you might have seen these kind of glasses before, and you might have heard them called pince-nez, but the actual proper pronunciation is pince-nez, and it means literally pinch nose. And you can see how it might have been difficult to keep these on your face as you were riding up and down a hill under fire. During the battle, Roosevelt lost at least 1, and by some accounts as many as 5 pairs of glasses. Some of the accounts even claim that they were shot off his face, so it's hard to see how glasses like this could be shot off your face without being shot in the face. But Roosevelt himself said that he knew it would be a problem if he lost his glasses because he couldn't see, and so he carried several pairs with him, putting them in his pockets and even stitching a pair into his famous hat. But his glasses, being a part of his famous ride, might not be their most important contribution in the life of America's 26th chief executive. On October 14th, 1912, Theodore Roosevelt's pince-nez may well have saved his life. One of the interesting things about pince-nez glasses is because of their size and frailty, they usually come in cases. Cases that, like these, were usually made out of metal. In 1912, Roosevelt was again running for president, but having failed to secure the Republican nomination, he was running under his own Progressive Party ticket. While campaigning in Milwaukee, a disturbed man who believed he was being visited by the ghost of William McKinley shot Roosevelt point-blank in the chest. But the bullet traveled through a thick overcoat, the text of a 50-page speech folded in half, and the metal case for Roosevelt's spectacles. The energy of the bullet was so spent that it lodged in Roosevelt's chest wall and was never removed. The metal of Roosevelt's glasses case may well have saved his life. Roosevelt's glasses, which biographer Edmund Morris suggests may have been responsible for his keen eye for detail, became so associated with the president that his is the only visage on Mount Rushmore to include glasses, even though all 4 presidents carved on the mountain were known to have used them. It is easy to see how Teddy Roosevelt, for whom glasses were a lifelong necessity rather than a result of age, was less concerned about his appearance. But he might have set a trend in that Presidents Woodrow Wilson and Franklin Delano Roosevelt, who also favored pince-nez glasses, were much more commonly photographed wearing them. With Wilson, who at one point briefly completely lost sight in his right eye, wearing glasses in his official portrait. The high blood pressure that was likely the cause of his 1906 central retinal vein occlusion and hemorrhage would also contribute to a serious stroke that he suffered in 1919. Like Theodore Roosevelt, Harry S. Truman needed glasses from a young age. His myopia required expensive glasses with thick lenses, and he avoided sports as a child for fear of breaking his glasses. Set on a military career, his eyesight prevented him from appointment to West Point. He was only able to enlist in the Missouri National Guard by cheating and memorizing an eye chart. He served in the artillery in the Great War and eventually reached the rank of colonel in the Army Reserve. Still, it is interesting to consider how his poor eyesight, keeping him out of the military academy, affected the life of the president, who once famously declared that he would rather have received the Medal of Honor than be elected president. You might think that Dwight Eisenhower would have been a shoo-in for president, given his fame as the supreme Allied commander of the Allied Expeditionary Force during the Second World War. But when he ran for president in 1952, he struggled with the ever-growingly important medium of television. Eisenhower seemed uncomfortable on TV, and the lighting made him appear, in the words of one CBS correspondent, old and unattractive. To address the issue, the campaign employed a marketing executive named Rosser Reeves. Reeves decided that Eisenhower should not wear glasses on TV, arguing that it made Eisenhower look younger. But the general, who used reading glasses to peruse maps during the war, couldn't read a prompter without them. The appearance of glasses was so detrimental that Reeves devised handheld cards with much larger lettering to allow Ike to perform without his glasses. Despite opponent Adlai Stevenson's attacks for Rosser selling the presidency like cereal, Ike won the election comfortably, becoming the nation's 34th president, and his glasses made it onto his official portrait. You might have guessed that our 35th president, John Fitzgerald Kennedy, didn't need glasses, as he was famously young and dynamic, and more likely to be seen in cool shades than corrective lenses. But during a presidential physical in 1963, his doctor recommended bifocals to replace his reading glasses. Kennedy was so taken with the glasses offered, bifocals made by the American Optical Company, that he asked if a pair could be produced in an hour in time for a press conference. He then ordered 3 new pairs of the aptly named executive bifocals. The director of marketing and public relations for American Bifocal sent out a note to all his field offices congratulating them on the sale, saying that if the president chooses the executive bifocal, then that certainly should bear out our claim that the executive is the finest bifocal for new bifocal wearers. In an odd coincidence, that note arrived in most American optical offices on November 22nd, the day that President Kennedy was assassinated. Lyndon Baines Johnson, the nation's 36th president, might have been unique among the eyeglass-wearing executives in that he seemed to have a particular fondness for them. Joshua Pitt of the LBJ Presidential Library and Museum was quoted on the website 2020 that Johnson frequently kept glasses lying around in case he might need them, especially inside desks and bathrooms and near televisions. Pitt added he was also prone to switching out glasses frequently for reasons unrelated to correcting his vision, such as if he decided they didn't look good on him and when he was photographed or appeared on television. LBJ even held on to glasses after his prescription changed, or glasses that were given to him as gifts that didn't meet his vision correction needs. The LBJ library collection includes more than 50 pairs of glasses that belonged to LBJ. The 37th president, Richard Nixon, apparently agreed with the idea that glasses were a bad look for the executive, very rarely letting himself be seen in them in public. In fact, both future President George H. Bush, then chairman of the Republican National Committee, and National Security staffer Dr. William Lloyd Stearman remarked that they had never seen Nixon wear glasses during a speech, until a speech given on August 9th, 1974, when publicly wearing his glasses was a poignant underline to the speech where he resigned the presidency. Jimmy Carter, the 39th president, was another who wore reading glasses but almost never let them be seen publicly. He explained why in an interview in 2002. As an active politician, I was always able to get along without lenses when making speeches, either by using large print, teleprompters, or just by speaking extemporaneously with a few notes. However, I don't have any feeling of embarrassment now when I speak while wearing well-designed eyeglasses. The former president now advocates for better eye care for children via his charitable organization, the Carter Center. Like Theodore Roosevelt and Harry Truman, the nation's 40th president, Ronald Reagan, suffered from vision problems from an early age. As a teenager, Reagan recalled he realized the extent of his vision impairment when he tried on his mother's spectacles and discovered the gloriously sharply outlined world. His visual acuity was laser measured at 20/200. However, unlike Roosevelt, Reagan became accustomed to not wearing glasses, owing to his career. When he first went to Hollywood, a girlfriend advised him, "If you could just take off those glasses, I could get you a screen test." While he served in the Army during the Second World War, he was restricted to limited service due to his eyesight. According to historian Edmund Morris, Reagan's poor vision actually aided his career, as an actor is taught not to focus on any one audience member. Morris speculates that Reagan's choice not to wear glasses impacted his philosophy, which tended to see events in broad strokes, as opposed to Roosevelt, who focused on minute detail. The most recent presidents have tended to follow that example of needing reading glasses but not letting themselves be seen wearing them in public. Both Bill Clinton and George W. Bush were rarely seen wearing glasses in photographs, and yet both donated glasses to the Museum of Vision in San Francisco. With his donation, Bush wrote that whether in the White House or around the globe, I wore these glasses when preparing speeches, reviewing briefings, or writing letters to constituents and world leaders. A recent unguarded photograph of President Donald Trump using reading glasses raised a bit of a stir last January, but oddly, the nation's 44th president, Barack Obama, who was more well known for wearing cool shades, seems never to have been publicly photographed wearing corrective lenses. Now, it might be that he simply has better eyesight than literally everyone else who has ever held that office, or it might be that he's simply better at hiding it, or maybe he uses contact lenses or has had corrective eye surgery. Two technologies whose greater availability today leaves us to wonder whether eyeglasses will continue to be a part of our chief executive's future, or merely a nearly forgotten part of our presidential past. Again, thank you to the good people at GlassesUSA.com for supporting our channel and sponsoring this episode. Check out the link in the description to get a special offer from GlassesUSA.com today. I hope you enjoyed this episode of The History Guy, short snippets of forgotten history between 10 and 15 minutes long. And if you did enjoy, please go ahead and click that thumbs up button. If you have any questions or comments or suggestions for future episodes, please write those in the comment section. I will be happy to personally respond. Be sure to follow The History Guy on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and check out our merchandise on teespring.com. And if you'd like more episodes on forgotten history, all you need to do is subscribe.